feel free to get started.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's a wonderful opportunity to be part of this event. And thank you to USA Core for the invitation. And I'm sorry I'm not in New York presenting, but I'm glad that the event is carrying on regardless. My name is John Gilmour, and I'm the founder and director of the LEAP schools, the science and math schools in South Africa. We have 6 schools there. And today I'd like to share with you just something of our thinking and our work in a way that will help to have the conversation around education in general. We believe that self-liberation, after what Mamphela has just taken us through, that self-liberation through consciousness development is the critical methodology for youth at risk in sub-Saharan Africa. My own journey to consciousness, as a child growing up in South Africa, I only knew a white world, a world in which the other was to be feared. My consciousness was stifled by a process of forced separation and also by a process of head-centered, cognitive, privileged education that taught me to be polite and not honest. I battled in my student years for an authentic voice and really had to work out what I was prepared to live for and what I was prepared to die for, while others were dying for what they believed. I began a series of subversions and explorations post-university by going into townships and in South Africa and coaching sport. I crossed thresholds into children's houses, and my own humiliation was that I was not going to be the one to liberate the people around me, but in fact, I needed to liberate myself. The painful losses of going to the funerals of young people that I'd been coaching very successfully, who died through impulsive behavior, through very poor lifestyle choices, activated me to realize that education is not working in our country. And that began my activism, the Leap to Leap, where we began to think of liberating structures and systems to change the way education is happening. Now today, on the 31st of 2020, we recognize unsustainable global realities. And we've already heard from Anitra that education needs to shift to be a critical focal point. But as the global virus crisis continues, the Gini coefficient widens. Never more than now is the digital divide amplified. Those who have devices and connectivity carry on life. Those who don't just go backwards. Privilege is compounded in this context. Unemployment is cascading. And in the continent of Africa, food security and access to health facilities is still the preserve of those who can afford it. The education paradigm in which we're operating is unsustainable and in many ways delusionary. Young people in South Africa are still steering by the stars. Mamphela wrote that book many years ago, and it was a book that influenced my thinking very, very greatly prior to LEAP. I want to just give you a message from one of our students. We put our students into a competition and said, while you're locked down, send us a 1-minute video in which you share something. And here's one of those videos. Sorry, let's go back.
Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet.
You can do it. So keep learning, finish those assignments, improvise so that you can reach and attain your goals. Persist, persevere, be diligent in the way that you do your work. Show that you are different and you are set apart from all those generations before you. Show that you've got the knowledge. I mean, if it means that you gotta sweat, work, don't sleep. Be safe, stay blessed, don't complain. You're better than that. You're bigger than that. Thank you.
In Africa, there are 94 to 100 million children and youth not at school. Millions continue to drop out of school. The unskilled and unemployable masses are growing, a real threat to peace both locally and internationally. Young women are still marginalized. We haven't got close to gender equity or equality in our continent. Basically, traditional Eurocentric education structures and pedagogy have failed Africa. And as Mamphela said, we've got to emerge from this current set of emergencies. We're still dealing in Africa with the disastrous consequences of colonialism. This can't be wished away with one brushstroke saying, you've been free since 1994. When the missionaries arrived, this is Jomo Kenyatta speaking, and later Desmond Tutu, the Africans had the land and the missionaries had the Bible. They taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. When we opened them, they had the land and we had the Bible. This is perpetuated by an ongoing oppressive education system where schools run trapped in the assumed needs of the 20th century. You can see in these two photographs, one taken in the 60s and the other taken quite recently, the rigidity, the transmission nature of education, the lack of flexibility, the lack of creativity reflected in the way we've structured our schools. Mamphela talked about the betrayal of the 1994 dream, a dream that imagined equality and a thriving economy. The country needs to hope again, and this is the work that provided the context for the LEAP intervention. Mandela said, it will take the action, the conscious action of human beings to turn around the reality of poverty. Martin Luther King dreamed that his 4 children would one day be judged only by the content of their character. By the content of their character, not by the accumulation of their knowledge. Maslow himself said, what is necessary to change a person is to change his awareness of himself. And of course, Biko, in his very simple 5-word title of the book that encompasses his writing, said, I write what I like, expressing his strong personal identity and consciousness, for which he died tragically at the hands of the oppressor while incarcerated. Other leaders like Graça Machel, bottom right, the wife of Nelson Mandela in his later life, and the wife of Samora Machel, the only woman to have been the wife of 2 presidents of 2 separate countries, says preventing the conflicts of tomorrow means changing the mindset of youth today, not the content knowledge. And as Mamphela said, attitudes towards other creatures conditioned by one's level of security within the universe, which she talked about earlier. Top right is the child's voice saying, I don't want you to save me. I want you to stand by my side as I save myself. That's the language of self-liberation. The specific context in which our LEAP children live and in which we work are shown in these 2 photographs. We've consciously chosen to work in the most marginalized communities where the socioeconomic realities are hugely disadvantaging children. Because our hypothesis is that children from any space can and will succeed and will go on to exceed expectations if their consciousness is activated and if they are taught in a space where there is emotional safety and real high expectations. The great Oliver Tambo said, the children of any nation are its future. A country, a movement, a person that does not value its youth and children does not deserve its future. In South Africa, we do not deserve the future. And so as LEAP, we choose to build big futures in broken spaces. We're challenging the assumption that traditional Eurocentric education takes that says cognitive development must be the priority of a good education. We all know, particularly at this time, that we live in a world that needs citizens who are intrinsically motivated, empathetic, agile, adaptive, and collaborative. These are 21st century learning outcomes. How on earth does knowledge accumulation achieve these? So at LEAP, we prioritize emotional and consciousness development, which allows for the development of metacognition, which is the gateway to improved science and maths learning. This new methodology relies heavily on flattening the hierarchy, taking the power and vertical authority out of an education structure and making the child's voice the critical voice in the school. We use the power of the circle. In virtually every day of our school life, every child sits in a circle and participates in conversations that are difficult and consciousness enhancing. We have 1,700 children in our schools at the moment. We have 65% of our students are girls. We have a mix between rural and urban. And bear in mind that all the children we are working with were denied access to maths and science education by law prior to 1990 and 1994. We have a model that builds around 4 strong components. First, we work with the development of self-esteem, a sense of self, which in this circle of courage is called independence. We do that in a context of community where love is a word we use and where we belong. And belonging is such a critical element of freeing oneself to actually transcend the limitations of consciousness. We teach our children to share, and we do that by practical sharing. Every one of our children is involved in a social development project in their own community as part of our curriculum. Generosity is something that has to be taught in this world. And then we get to mastery. And then, of course, we can talk about maths and science mastery in that. And we want to do that. But we don't start with mastery as the traditional Eurocentric system does. We start with independence and belonging and work through to the mastery components. We think that an integrated education for a new civilization has to go back to what we know, that it is the integration of the head, the heart, and the hands that will allow children to develop holistically with confidence and belief in themselves. And here we see some photographs of our farm at one of our schools in Limpopo, where our children are farming and growing produce and sharing it with needy people in the community. We commit to the principle, the African philosophy of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the idea that persons depend on other persons to be. I am human because of you. And as Professor James Agudi said, that is, a person is a person through persons. So we are trying to flip the values framework of rugged individualism of the West to the implicit values embedded in the historical interdependent humanity of Africa. We need to own our heritage, not teach people to devalue. Mamphela spoke quite a lot about that, but also own our spaces. In the bottom left picture, I'm standing on a mountain near to Table Mountain with a group of LEAP students who, when they went up that mountain, did not believe that it could belong to them. When asked the question, to whom does this mountain belong? They said, to the white people. Steve Biko said, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. I'm afraid the apartheid of the mind is with us in this country, not only for the oppressed, but also for the oppressor. So we work to integrate these principles and practices, which are very simple and very basic, but very tough. We stand in awe of Wangari Maathai, who spoke on behalf of the women of Africa and the women of the world, to say African women must know that it's okay for them to be the way they are, to see the way they are as a strength, and to be liberated from fear and from silence. And we look to activate an authentic voice in each one of our children by giving them opportunity to test that voice, to make mistakes, to learn from them, and to take risks. They have to grow into this world that's willing to speak truth to power. We know that education is the key, but not the education of compliance. We have to leap to develop an education of self-liberation. Activation of an authentic, intrinsically driven voice will develop global citizens who can speak truth to power in the 21st and 22nd centuries. Where are we in South Africa? Many of the questions asked in the 1970s are still the questions asked by young people in South Africa today. As Mamphela said, we have not healed, we are wounded. Political settlement was achieved, but no emotional settlement and no economic settlement occurred. I want to draw your attention, and I'm very grateful to Barry Hughes for this projection. to the human capital distribution for South Africa. This particular graph represents the human capital distribution in 2015, with the vertical axis being the age categories of people from 4 to 100, and the horizontal axis split in the middle being the millions of people. To the left, millions of men; to the right, millions of women, females to the right, males to the left. And the color coding, there are 5 colors. The gray indicates the children who have not yet been to school. And then the red is a band which indicates the number of people who've never had an education or have an incomplete primary education. The green, completed primary education only, and the yellow, completed through secondary education, with the little tips on the fringes being those who've completed through tertiary education. This does not represent a pretty picture. If we take Barry Hughes's projections through to the year 2030 and to the year 2050, left and right respectively, you will see a significant projection of significant improvement, that there will be more children going to and through secondary education, that the number of young people who will get to tertiary will increase. And what's particularly pleasing is, if you look at the 2050 projection, is that the female increase of numbers in tertiary education is particularly significant. But can we afford to wait until 2050? We don't believe we can. We have a window of optimism in this country and on this continent, which cannot wait that long. And tonight we ask, how could we or should we apply LEAP methodology? If we take the LEAP success in terms of the current model, and you use the indicators that I've listed, you'll see that the pass rate over 15 years of work at LEAP, exit years, grade 12, is 94% against a national average of 76%. Those who achieve access to university at LEAP make up 78%. Nationally, it's only 5% of the townships in which we are working would gain access to university, while the national average, including all schools of privilege, private and semi-state, would make up 37%. And we're particularly pleased that 96% of the children who pass at LEAP gain access to higher education. What is sad about South Africa and about Africa in general is that we have done well to create access to schooling, but we are losing so many students at the top end of schooling. The dropout rate is appalling. Now, if you look at this graphic, you'll see that in the left-hand bar, grade 2 in 2009, there were almost 1 million young people in school. By the time we got to 2019, only 42% of that 100% remained and had passed. And only 19% had achieved what we call a bachelor pass, which is a university access pass. So the real pass rate in our country is 42%. The townships in which LEAP works have dropout rates much higher, close to 70%. These people do not drop out to go to alternatives, they drop out to become unemployed and in some cases unemployable. If you integrate those figures I've just given you, and you include the dropout and failure rates, the real indicators are that the pass rate at LEAP over the years has been 85% and the national pass rate 42%. Access to university 72 against a national of 21%. And those eligible for higher education is more than double. The graduates of LEAP have gone on to study. Most, up to 75% are either in university or completed university. And the areas of their focus are shown on this pie chart. Now, if you take the area called science, information technology, and commerce and engineering, which makes up almost 3/4 of the pie, there would be no access to those careers if they were not doing maths at the level at which we're offering it, and science. The outcomes have gone beyond that. 75%, as I say, are university degree qualified or focused, whereas the national average for Black students of people passing at university in the communities we're talking about is 1%. Many are employed in government posts, many have become entrepreneurs. social and commercial. And of course, none of our students has even thought about emigrating because they're committed to South African development. We've had national recognition in a number of areas, including a number of our students participating in Obama leadership programs. Most important to us is that our children, when they graduate and go on to be parents, are good, caring citizens, loving parents, and caring partners. Now, the relative costs of this project per learner per annum are reflected in these two graphics. If you take the LEAP cost per learner per year, per annum, it's $2,000 more or less. The state cost is $1,700. Low cost private schooling average cost is $3,500. And high cost private schooling average is up to averages out at $10,000. If we actually work the costs based on the number of students who pass grade 12, and you take the state cost per learner at 42% pass rate, the cost per learner is $3,600. And the LEAP cost per learner at 85% pass rate is $2,300. We have projects that we're undertaking that will integrate the Sustainable Development Goal needs into our curriculum. One of these is our focus on the amazing speckworm, which is a plant that is unique and endemic to South Africa. It has the capacity to sequester carbon at 10 times the rate of the rainforests, equatorial rainforests. And you see here a picture of our children planting speckworm in a labyrinth that is being created in the Western Cape currently. And as Matthias said, it's the little things that citizens do. That's what will make the difference. We participate in a variety of competitions and opportunities which are science-based. And two years ago, our students partnered with a school in Pretoria called St. Albans, and together they participated in the Solar Challenge, the Sasol Solar Challenge, which involved 7 teams, 6 from university, and our team was the only one from the school. They designed and built this solar-powered car and then drove it from Pretoria to Cape Town. We came fourth in the competition, but our students were awarded the top prize for their ability to communicate along the road and share the story, which we were very proud of. We are committed to a water testing, a quality testing project, which we're trying to launch right now. It's difficult in the present situation, but we're busy putting it together. Water quality and health, we know, are bound together, and in South Africa, that's particularly true. In the communities in which we live and work, it's a real concern. Existing health outcomes in waterborne diseases are declining. So we wish to develop a new teaching tool to train secondary school children to accomplish water monitoring science tasks, where every LEAP student will either be a tester, a capturer, an analyst, or an interpreter. And we hope in that process to develop a student-driven water quality testing project in our communities. Not only have we had those outcomes, we've also incubated 2 significant organizations. The first one is called the Global Teachers Institute. Now this is a project which was born in LEAP and has subsequently graduated and become a freestanding project. Purpose of this project is to unlock aspiring teachers in the communities in which we work and to encourage them to become teacher activists through distance learning and in a full apprenticeship where they are embedded in schools. We currently have nearly 200 such young people working in government schools as well as in private schools and LEAP schools. Mamphela and I also co-founded an organization called Bridge just over 10 years ago. And that was as a call from the Minister of Education of the time for us to create an innovation hub for people who were trying to change things in education. And so we've developed the methodology of communities of practice for professional development and also focused very strongly on knowledge management as a critical element of the professional work of teachers. Now, how could this transformative approach be applied in the future? Clearly, we would hope to be able to increase the application in South Africa, but we do believe there's significant possibilities in other sub-Saharan African contexts, and possibly in South American contexts as well. Why do we think this? Well, if you have a look at, again, Barry Hughes's projections, we gave him, and thank you to Anitra for helping Barry to get the focus right and the questions right, and then also to provide the right information and ask for the right information. We looked at 6 particular focus areas of increasing quality and enrollment, of what would happen to the Human Development Index, what would happen in terms of years of education, and what would happen in terms of reduction of hunger and improving gender empowerment. And if you look at the top right graphic, you'll see that the vertical column is percentage for age. There's an age percentage there. And then the years from 2020 through to 2050. And the conclusion of the model was that upper secondary education completion rates would increase significantly and very quickly with the application of LEAP methodology. If you look at the second diagram, years of formal education attainment, again, if you look at 2030, already a significant gap between the 12 to the 13 in a very short time, and increasing. Barry also looked at the percentage of South African population living on less than $1.90 per day, and showed again, real significant improvement. Slightly slower in the uptake, obviously, but becoming increasingly significant over the years. And the same is true for the GDP per capita at purchasing power parity. Barry Hughes's conclusion, and I'm really grateful to Barry for the work he did for us and shared with us, is there's little doubt that any initiative involving the work that LEAP has done would be beneficial in sub-Saharan Africa. Expansions of enrollment and enhanced quality of education will be outcomes, and LEAP has demonstrated this potential already. So what would our rational steps be? It would be to test in small scale in a number of countries, and then to do the analysis with predictive analytics and statistics to identify in which nations we could develop additional training components. And that would enable us to prepare to scale up for success across a broader front. We are preparing a number of proposals in this regard right now. I want to share with you that we do have challenges and we do have opportunities. Our challenges are, the immediate challenges are the short-term survivability through the COVID-19 crisis. Not only are we experiencing that crisis, our country has just been downgraded by Moody to what is called junk status. Economically, we are struggling, and the pot of money for NPOs, non-profit organizations like ours, is decreasing. Clearly, we need a long-term funding plan for the school sustainability. These are challenges. The opportunities are that we have developed the thinking and the ideas around the SPECBOOM project and the water quality testing project, and we obviously are looking for seed funding for that. We need to institutionalize and codify our work, and we need to set up our training capacity so that we're ready for the testing and applications in other countries. And obviously we need to establish international funding and government partnerships. Now, I want to just once again let one of the students speak to us. She too was part of the competition. While we're all in lockdown, we asked our students to make 1-minute videos, and all of them did that. And I'm sharing the second one with you now.
Greetings to you all. My name is Gilmour and Mamphela. I go to LEAP Science in my school in Harangua, LEAP 6. What does LEAP mean to me right now? For me, LEAP is more than just an organization. LEAP means the world to me because it has taught me how to think, which is a very important skill you need to survive in the world that we're living in. It has taught me how to be self-reliant. That is why I'm able to work independently with little supervision. LEAP has taught me to be prepared to learn anywhere, anytime. And it has taught me how to be assertive, to be able to stand for myself, and to be able to speak my mind. LEAP has taught me lessons that I'll use in my entire life. That is why I'm grateful and proud to say I am who I am because of LEAP. It has built a strong human in me that I will carry wherever I go in life. And I'm privileged to be part of the LEAP family. And LEAP means the world to me.
So in just coming to the close, through LEAP, we are, with our students, claiming the legends and the wisdom of Africa. We are proud of the African traditions. We are proud of the African history. We're proud of the people who've risen to greatness through Africa. And we're claiming the legacy from the ashes of Alexandria Library. And this is what our children will hold on to in their lives. I want to say thank you for assistance with preparation for this event to Dr. Ramphele, who's both a mentor, guide, and friend to me, Dr. Barry Hughes for his work around the projections, and Dr. Nitra Thorhag for really just even conceptualizing this possibility. Really grateful to all of you. And for the organizational support, the USA Corps, K-Corps, and the Brazilian Association Club of Rome. Really grateful. I'm asking you specifically at this time to consider guiding us in terms of support for the work of LEAP. We are in some dire straits because of the COVID virus, and we're working hard to change that. Many of our children do not have cell phone access and cannot get into data. So we are listing here some of the ways in which help would be useful. The cost of a smart cell phone with data is for a period of time would be $200. And then the cost per student per year is listed, average cost per teacher per year, and the project costs. And if anybody is able or willing to be a USA LEAP patron, we're setting that bar at $20,000. That can be paid either directly to a LEAP on the website, or it can be, the contribution can be, for the purposes of tax credit, can be paid into GCEF, an organization with a 40-year history that would make sure that that donation goes directly to LEAP. There's a donate button on the website. And if you would like to just contact me directly and talk to me about possibilities, please do that. I would welcome any conversation around any ideas that you would have or connections that you could make for us to ensure our sustainability. And I think we move now to questions and answers. Thank you, Ryan.